The summer of 1995 arrived with a heat that turned the air thick and unbreathable, the kind that clings to your skin like a heavy, wet blanket. I was fresh out of college, eager for adventure and a paycheck that would sustain me while I figured out my next steps in life. That's when I received the call that changed everything. Congratulations, Mr. Ellis. You've been selected for the fire lookout position. The voice on the other end crackled, strained as if transmitting from far away. It's remote, but it pays well. Are you interested? I had never heard of a fire lookout tower before, but the idea of living high above the ground, surrounded by towering pines and sweeping vistas, was irresistible. I said yes without hesitation. After all, how hard could it be? Just me, a radio, and the wilderness for the summer. A week later, I found myself driving deep into the heart of the Cascade Mountains. The road twisted and turned, a ribbon of asphalt that seemed to lead me away from civilization and into a realm untouched by time. As I climbed higher, the trees thickened, their trunks tall and sturdy, their leaves whispering secrets to one another in the gentle breeze. When I arrived at the fire lookout tower, I was struck by its imposing presence. The structure stood alone on a rocky outcrop. A steel frame painted bright red, gleaming against the backdrop of blue sky and green mountains. It was a 3-story tower with a small living area on the first floor, a kitchen, and a bathroom. The second floor housed the lookout room, with massive windows that offered an unobstructed view of the forest below, and the top floor was a small observation deck where I could step out and feel the wind rush against me. I climbed the rickety staircase, the metal creaking underfoot, and pushed open the door to my new home. Inside, the walls were bare and the furniture was sparse. A small table, a couple of chairs, and a bed that smelled faintly of mildew. A radio crackled to life on the table, a relic from another era. I would soon learn its importance, but for now, it felt oddly comforting. The first few days were blissful. I spent my mornings reading and my afternoons gazing out at the forest, a sea of green stretching endlessly before me. I took note of the wildlife, a family of deer grazing peacefully in the clearing, squirrels darting between branches, and the occasional hawk soaring overhead. I felt a profound sense of peace, a stark contrast to the chaotic life I had left behind. However, as the sun dipped below the horizon each night, an unsettling feeling crept in. The forest transformed, the sounds of the day fading into an eerie silence. I would sit in the lookout room, watching the shadows lengthen and darken, the wind whispering through the trees like an ancient lullaby. The solitude began to weigh on me, and I often found myself glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see someone or something watching me. On my first night alone in the tower, I turned off the lights and settled into bed. The faint sounds of the forest surrounded me, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl, the occasional snap of a twig. I tried to focus on those sounds, reassuring myself that I was safe. But sleep eluded me, and I found myself staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with thoughts of the unknown. It was around 2 a.m. when I heard it. A soft thud, followed by the unmistakable sound of something scraping against the tower. My heart raced as I sat up, straining to hear. The sound came again, a slow, deliberate scrape, like fingernails dragging across metal. I clutched the blanket around me, willing myself to remain calm. It was just my imagination, I told myself. The wind was playing tricks. But then I heard it again, louder this time, accompanied by a low, guttural growl that sent chills down my spine. I shot out of bed, my heart pounding in my chest, and grabbed the flashlight from the table. I flicked it on, the beam cutting through the darkness, illuminating the small room. There was nothing there, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I climbed the stairs to the observation deck, the flashlight shaking in my hand. I peered into the darkness, the beam trembling as I scanned the forest below. The trees stood tall and silent, but there was something unsettling about the way they swayed, as if they were alive, watching me in return. I stood there for what felt like hours, listening to the night, waiting for something to happen. Finally, exhaustion took over and I returned to my bed, pulling the covers tight around me, but sleep was elusive. The sounds continued throughout the night, and each time I closed my eyes, I was jolted awake by the fear that something was out there lurking in the shadows. As the days turned into weeks, I settled into a routine. I scanned the forest for signs of smoke during the day and retreated to my makeshift living space at night. The strange sounds continued, but I began to convince myself they were just the sounds of the forest, a bear rummaging through the brush or the wind playing tricks on the metal structure of the tower. However, my sense of isolation deepened. I would call into the dispatch station every morning, reporting any signs of fire, but the conversations felt increasingly hollow. I missed human connection, the laughter and warmth of shared experiences. I began to dread the nights when the forest would come alive with whispers and rustles. One night, while pacing the small living area, I heard something tap against the window. I froze, my heart racing. I approached cautiously, peering through the glass. The moonlight illuminated the forest, casting long shadows, but there was nothing there. I turned away, shaking off the unease, but the tapping returned, a soft, rhythmic sound. I gripped the edge of the table, feeling the cold metal beneath my fingers. Finally, I mustered the courage to open the window. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. "Is anyone there?" The only response was the wind rustling through the trees. I closed the window and locked it tight, the sound of tapping fading into the background. As the weeks wore on, the radio became my only lifeline to the outside world. I would listen to the dispatch chatter, the voices crackling through the static. One evening, I tuned into a conversation about the recent surge in wildfires across the region. The dispatcher's voice was tense, filled with urgency. "Keep an eye out for anything unusual, folks," she said. "We've had reports of strange activity in the woods. Stay alert." I felt a knot of dread form in my stomach. What did she mean by strange activity? My thoughts immediately drifted back to the sounds I had heard, the feeling of being watched. That night, the whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices swirling in the darkness. I sat on my bed, the radio crackling softly beside me. The voices rose and fell, merging into a single, haunting melody. I strained to hear, but the words were indistinguishable, a language I couldn't comprehend. It felt like the forest itself was trying to communicate with me, and I was left on the outside, an intruder in its world. One afternoon, as I was scanning the horizon for signs of smoke, I caught a glimpse of movement among the trees. My heart raced as I focused the binoculars on the area, and to my surprise, I saw a figure, tall and gaunt, shrouded in the shadows of the forest. It stood perfectly still, watching me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. I dropped the binoculars and stumbled back, panic rising within me. Who was that? Had someone come to find me? I reached for the radio, my hands trembling. "Dispatch, this is Lookout Tower 7. I have a situation. There's someone in the woods." There was a long pause before the dispatcher responded, her voice steady but tinged with concern. "What do you mean someone? Can you describe them?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. "It's hard to say. They're just standing there. They haven't moved." "Stay where you are and keep an eye on them. We'll send someone out to check," she said. I returned to the binoculars, but the figure was gone. I scanned the trees, my heart pounding. Had I imagined it? The forest felt impossibly quiet, as if it were holding its breath. I felt a strange mix of fear and curiosity. I wanted to believe it was just my imagination, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. Days passed, and I found solace in writing my thoughts down in a journal I had brought with me. I began documenting my experiences in the tower, the sounds of the night, the figure in the woods, and the growing sense of dread that clung to me like a shadow. It was a way to make sense of my fears, to give them a tangible form. As I wrote, I couldn't shake the feeling that the forest was alive in ways I couldn't comprehend. The trees seemed to move, whispering secrets to one another, and I often felt eyes on me, even when I was alone. I would catch glimpses of movement out of the corner of my eye, but whenever I turned to look, there was nothing there. One evening, as I flipped through the pages of my journal, I found a note I had written in a fit of panic after my first night in the tower. "I hear them at night. They scratch at the walls, whispering my name. I don't know what they want. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Reading those words sent a shiver down my spine. Had it really come to this? Was I truly losing my grip on reality? I closed the journal and tucked it away, feeling the weight of its contents heavy on my chest. Then, one fateful night, a storm rolled in, dark clouds blotting out the stars and unleashing torrents of rain. I watched from the lookout room as the wind howled and the trees bent under the force of the gusts. The radio crackled to life, the dispatcher's voice filled with urgency. "Lookout Tower 7, you need to prepare for potential evacuations. The weather is worsening, and we've received reports of increased fire activity in the area." I felt a surge of adrenaline. The storm was unlike anything I had ever experienced. The wind rattled the tower, and I could feel the metal groan under the strain. I grabbed my backpack, shoving essentials inside, ready to evacuate if needed. As the storm intensified, I huddled in the corner of the lookout room, listening to the chaos outside. The rain lashed against the windows, and I felt small and vulnerable. Then, through the cacophony, I heard it again, the scratching sound. It was louder now, almost frantic, and I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. I leaped to my feet and grabbed the flashlight, shining it toward the window. Nothing. The trees swayed violently, the storm masking any other sounds. But the scratching continued, echoing in the back of my mind. I climbed to the observation deck, gripping the railing tightly. Lightning illuminated the forest in stark flashes, revealing the dark shapes of the trees and the shadows that lurked just beyond the edge of the light. I thought I saw movement, a figure darting between the trunks, but each time I focused, it vanished. "Get a grip, Ellis," I muttered to myself, but my voice felt weak against the storm. I was losing it. The isolation was gnawing at me, and the sounds of the forest were becoming a chorus of madness. When dawn finally broke, the storm had passed, leaving the air thick with humidity and the scent of wet earth. I emerged from the tower, squinting against the bright light. The forest was eerily quiet, the chaos of the night replaced by an unsettling stillness. As I surveyed the damage, I noticed something strange. Trees had fallen, their roots ripped from the ground, but in their wake, I found something else. A trail leading deeper into the woods, as if something had been pulled through the underbrush. My curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed my backpack and set off, the path winding through the thick foliage. The air was heavy with moisture, and I could feel the forest closing in around me. The shadows seemed to dance, and I kept glancing over my shoulder, convinced that I wasn't alone. The trail led me to a small clearing, and at its center lay a crude structure made of branches and leaves. My heart raced as I approached, the hairs on my arms standing on end. It looked like a makeshift shelter, but there was something off about it. An unsettling energy hung in the air, and I could almost hear the whispers again, swirling around me like a cold breeze. The moment I stepped into the clearing, I felt a shift in the atmosphere. The air grew colder, and the whispers intensified, becoming a low hum that reverberated through my bones. I knelt down to inspect the shelter, my hands trembling as I brushed away the leaves. Inside, I discovered a collection of items, broken branches, shards of glass, and something that looked like old photographs, their edges frayed and faded. I picked one up, squinting to see the faces captured within. They were unfamiliar, but their eyes seemed to follow me, filled with a sorrow that sent chills down my spine. As I turned to leave, I heard a noise behind me, a soft rustling that froze me in place. I glanced over my shoulder, and my heart dropped. There, at the edge of the clearing, stood the figure I had seen weeks earlier. It was just as I remembered, tall, gaunt, and cloaked in shadows, its features obscured by darkness. I stumbled back, my heart pounding. "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice echoing through the clearing. The figure remained still, watching me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. I felt a mix of fear and anger, my instincts screaming for me to run, but I couldn't move. The figure took a step forward, and I felt an overwhelming urge to flee. I turned and bolted down the path, my heart racing as I navigated the thick underbrush. I could hear footsteps behind me, quick and deliberate, but every time I glanced back, I saw nothing. I stumbled through the forest, branches scratching at my arms and legs, adrenaline fueling my flight. I finally broke through the trees and returned to the tower, slamming the door behind me. I leaned against it, panting, the shadows of the forest closing in around me. I knew I couldn't stay there. Something was out there, watching me, and it was only a matter of time before it came for me again. I grabbed the radio, my hands shaking as I called into dispatch. "Lookout Tower 7, I need immediate assistance. There's something in the woods, someone, I don't know what it is, but I can't stay here." There was a long pause before the dispatcher responded, her voice calm but filled with concern. "Stay where you are, we'll send someone out to check on you. Just keep the radio on." As I waited for help, I paced the small living area, the weight of fear heavy on my shoulders. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I returned to the journal, scribbling my thoughts down in a frantic rush, trying to make sense of the events. "What if it's not just a person?" I wrote, my hand shaking as I pressed the pen to the paper. "What if it's something more? The forest feels alive, and I'm beginning to think it doesn't want me here." Hours passed, the sun dipping low in the sky, casting long shadows across the forest floor. I jumped at every sound, every rustle of leaves outside. The night descended quickly, wrapping the tower in darkness. I climbed to the observation deck, shining my flashlight into the void, but there was nothing, only the endless expanse of trees. The radio crackled to life, and I almost dropped it in surprise. "Lookout Tower 7, this is dispatch. We're sending someone out, but it might take some time. Can you hold on?" I nodded, even though they couldn't see me. "Yes, I'll be here." As night fell, the forest transformed into a labyrinth of shadows. I could feel the whispers growing louder, echoing through the tower. I sat on my bed, clutching the flashlight, waiting for dawn to break. Then, the scratching returned, more insistent this time. It was coming from outside the tower, a rhythmic sound that sent chills down my spine. I crept to the window, peering out into the darkness. My heart raced as I saw the figure again, standing just outside the reach of the light. I stumbled back, my breath quickening. The figure was closer than before, its form now discernible. Long limbs, a hollowed chest, and eyes that glowed like embers in the night. Panic surged within me, and I raced to the radio. "Dispatch, it's here. I don't know what it is, but it's outside." "Hold tight, we're almost there," the dispatcher replied, but her voice felt distant, fading into the chaos around me. I slammed the window shut and locked it, my mind racing. I had to get out of the tower, it wasn't safe here anymore. I grabbed my backpack, ready to make a run for it, when a loud bang echoed through the tower. The door rattled as if something was trying to get in. My heart raced as I pressed myself against the wall, the weight of fear pressing down on me. The scratching escalated, a cacophony of noise that filled the small space. I could feel the shadows closing in, the whispers merging into a single, haunting voice that beckoned me to come closer. I darted to the radio, desperately calling for help, but the only response was static. "No, no, no," I shouted, panic rising in my chest. I was utterly alone, trapped in this metal cage surrounded by darkness. Then silence. The scratching stopped and the whispers faded. I hesitated, my breath catching in my throat. Had it gone? I moved toward the door, peering through the small window. The figure was gone, but a feeling of dread clung to me like a second skin. I had to leave. I couldn't stay in the tower any longer. I grabbed my flashlight and backpack, pushing the door open just a crack. The forest loomed before me, shrouded in darkness, but I had to risk it. As I stepped outside, the air was thick with tension. The trees seemed to close in around me, their branches reaching out like skeletal hands. I turned on my flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness, and began to run. The forest felt alive, the shadows shifting and twisting as I navigated through the underbrush. I could hear the whispers again, echoing in the distance, and with each step, I felt the presence of something chasing me. I stumbled through the trees, branches scratching at my skin, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I had to find a way back to civilization. The path was treacherous, but I pressed on, fear propelling me forward. I ran until my legs burned and my lungs screamed for air. Finally, I burst into a small clearing, panting heavily. I turned to look behind me, the flashlight beam dancing through the trees, but there was nothing there, only the silence of the forest. I collapsed to the ground, my heart racing, and pulled out the radio. "Dispatch, this is Lookout Tower 7. I need immediate assistance. I'm in the woods." The crackle of static filled the air, and I felt a wave of despair wash over me. I was alone, trapped in a nightmare with no way out. Suddenly, I heard a noise, a low growl coming from the darkness. I scrambled to my feet, flashlight aimed ahead. The figure was back, emerging from the shadows, its eyes burning with a sinister glow. I turned to run, but I was disoriented, the trees looming overhead, twisting and shifting as I fled. Just as I thought I was about to be caught, I stumbled upon a narrow path that led deeper into the forest. I took it, praying it would lead me to safety. My legs felt like lead, but I pushed forward, the growling growing closer behind me. Then, I broke through the trees and found myself at the edge of a cliff. Below me, the valley stretched out, a sea of trees and shadows. I turned back, heart racing, the figure standing at the edge of the forest, watching me with an intensity that made my blood run cold. "Leave me alone," I screamed, but the figure remained still, its presence overwhelming. I felt the weight of the forest pressing down on me, a suffocating darkness that threatened to swallow me whole. In a moment of desperation, I turned and ran along the edge of the cliff, looking for a way down. I couldn't go back into the woods. The figure was waiting for me. As I raced forward, I lost my footing and tumbled down the slope, landing hard on the ground below. Dazed, I pushed myself up, wincing at the pain coursing through my body. The flashlight flickered, casting erratic shadows as I stumbled through the underbrush. I could hear the growling again, closer this time, and I ran, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The forest felt alive around me, the shadows swirling and closing in as I fought to escape. I burst through the trees and found myself in another clearing, but this one was different. It was filled with remnants of the past, old structures covered in vines, the remains of a long abandoned settlement. I hesitated at the edge of the clearing, the weight of dread pressing down on me. The settlement was a ghostly reminder of what once was, and I felt a chill run down my spine. I stepped closer, my curiosity outweighing my fear. As I explored the ruins, I discovered remnants of lives long gone, broken furniture, rusted tools, and faded photographs scattered across the ground. Each item told a story, a piece of history left behind. But there was something else here, something darker. In the center of the clearing stood a large wooden structure, its walls covered in strange symbols and markings. I felt drawn to it, as if it was calling to me. I stepped closer, my heart racing, and pressed my hand against the rough surface. Suddenly, the whispers returned, swirling around me, a cacophony of voices rising and falling like a tide. I staggered back, the weight of their words crashing over me. They were speaking to me, urging me to listen, to understand. In that moment, clarity washed over me. I understood now. The forest was alive, a sentient being, and it was trying to communicate. The figure I had seen was not a monster but a guardian, a protector of the ancient secrets that lay hidden within the woods. The settlement was a reminder of those who had come before, who had sought to exploit the forest for their own gain. The whispers were the voices of the lost, warning me of the dangers that lay ahead. I felt a profound sense of responsibility settle over me. I had to protect this place, to honor its history and the spirits that dwelled within. With renewed determination, I turned and fled from the clearing, the whispers guiding me back through the trees. I ran until I reached the edge of the forest, collapsing onto the ground as I emerged into the open air. As I lay on the ground, gasping for breath, I knew I couldn't go back to the tower. It was no longer a sanctuary but a prison, a place that held the weight of the forest's secrets. I had to find help, to warn others about the dangers that lurked within the woods. I picked myself up and began to walk, following the faint sound of the river in the distance. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the landscape. I felt the forest behind me, alive and watchful, but I pressed on, determined to reach safety. As I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. The whispers grew louder, a chorus of voices urging me to turn back, to embrace the darkness. But I couldn't. I had seen too much, felt too much, and I was determined to escape. Finally, I stumbled upon a dirt road, my heart racing as I realized it might lead me back to civilization. I followed it, the sound of the river guiding me along. As I walked, I heard a vehicle approaching, and I waved my arms frantically. A pickup truck pulled over, the driver's face filled with concern. "Are you okay?" he asked, jumping out of the truck. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I need help," I gasped, panic rising in my chest. "There's something in the woods, a figure, voices. You have to believe me." He looked skeptical, but I saw the worry in his eyes. "Get in. We'll get you out of here." As we drove away, I felt a sense of relief wash over me, but the weight of the forest lingered. I turned back to look at the trees, feeling the whispers fade into the distance. I had escaped, but I knew that the secrets of the forest would remain, hidden from the world. When I finally returned to town, I reported everything to the authorities, but they dismissed my claims as the ramblings of a frightened young man. They sent a team to the lookout tower, but when they arrived, they found nothing unusual, just an empty structure standing guard over the forest. Days turned into weeks, and I tried to resume my life, but the memories haunted me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had left something behind, that the forest was still calling to me. I returned to my journal, pouring my thoughts onto the pages, but the whispers never left me. I often found myself staring into the woods, feeling the pull of the trees. I wondered if I had truly escaped, or if the forest had merely allowed me to leave, waiting for the right moment to call me back. The figure I had seen lingered in my mind, its eyes burning with a knowing sadness. I took to hiking in the area, hoping to find closure. Each time I stepped into the woods, I felt the weight of the past pressing down on me. I tried to understand what I had experienced, but the answers remained elusive. One fateful day, I decided to return to the fire lookout tower. I needed to confront my fears, to face the darkness that had haunted me since my summer in the woods. As I approached the tower, the air grew thick with tension. The forest seemed to watch, waiting for my arrival. I climbed the stairs to the lookout room, the familiar creaks echoing in the silence. Everything looked the same, but I could feel the energy shifting around me. I stood at the window, looking out at the sprawling forest, memories flooding back. Then I heard it, the whispers, a soft murmur that wrapped around me like a shroud. I closed my eyes, letting the voices wash over me. This time, I was ready to listen. I would uncover the truth, no matter the cost. As night fell, the forest came alive with sound. The whispers grew louder, forming a cohesive chorus that filled the air. I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the fear that threatened to consume me. I had to know what lay hidden within the woods. With determination in my heart, I stepped outside, the moon casting an ethereal glow over the forest. The path that had once terrified me now beckoned me forward. I followed it, each step echoing with purpose. As I ventured deeper into the woods, the shadows danced around me, and I felt the presence of the figure again, guiding me. The growling returned, but this time, I didn't run. I moved forward, confronting the darkness head-on. Finally, I found myself back in the clearing where I had first encountered the figure. The atmosphere was charged, electric, and I could feel the whispers intensifying. The figure stood at the edge of the clearing, watching me with an intensity that made my heart race. "I know why you're here," it spoke, its voice echoing through the air like thunder. "You seek understanding." I nodded, my voice trembling. "What do you want from me?" The figure stepped closer, and I could see its features more clearly. Hollow cheeks, deep-set eyes, but there was a sorrow in its gaze that resonated with me. "You are a protector now. The forest chose you, and you must honor its secrets." I felt the weight of the figure's words sink in. I had been brought here for a reason, to become a guardian of the forest, to protect it from those who sought to exploit its beauty. But how? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. The figure extended its hand, revealing a small, intricate amulet, an ancient symbol that pulsed with energy. "Take this. It will connect you to the forest, allowing you to hear its voice and understand its will." I hesitated, feeling the gravity of the moment. If I accepted this burden, my life would change forever. I could no longer return to the life I once knew. But deep down, I understood that I had already chosen this path. With trembling hands, I reached out and took the amulet. The moment it touched my skin, a rush of energy surged through me, and I was overwhelmed by visions, images of the forest, the spirits that inhabited it, and the dangers that lurked in the shadows. I fell to my knees, gasping as the power coursed through me. The whispers morphed into a clear voice, guiding me, teaching me the ways of the forest. I could feel its heartbeat, the pulse of life that surrounded me. In that moment, I understood my purpose. I was no longer just a lookout. I was a guardian, a protector of the ancient secrets that lay hidden within the woods. The weight of responsibility settled over me, but I felt a sense of belonging, a connection to something greater than myself. I stood up, feeling the energy of the forest coursing through my veins. The figure nodded, a look of approval in its eyes. "You are ready. Now you must watch over this place. Keep it safe from those who would seek to harm it." I felt the truth of its words resonating within me. I would dedicate my life to protecting the forest, to ensuring that its secrets remained hidden from those who sought to exploit it. As I stepped back from the clearing, I felt the forest embrace me, its whispers a soft melody in my ears. I was no longer alone. The spirits of the woods were with me, guiding me on my path. With renewed purpose, I turned back toward the tower, the weight of the amulet resting against my chest. I knew my journey was just beginning. I would return to town, share my story, and help others understand the importance of protecting the land we often took for granted. As I reached the lookout tower, the sun began to rise, casting golden rays across the forest. I stood at the window, looking out at the trees, the whispers now a gentle breeze caressing my face. The forest was alive and I was its guardian, a protector of the secrets that lay within, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. I smiled, feeling the warmth of the sun on my skin. I had found my purpose and I would never turn back.